This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and coming at us today is our boy Andrew's going to give us this week's topics.
So the Pistons finally concluded their GM search. We'll give you our thoughts on it, but it's probably a day to be celebrated. And Jamaal Adams has opted for a trade in New York. We discuss, are the Lions an option? Do we want him here? It's a Fan Report.
Okay, well, nice short and sweet intro to the point. We like that. Which do you want to start with today?
Let's talk about Jamaal Adams real quick, and then I think the bigger topic at hand would probably be Troy Weaver. So
that's fair, and I agree with you there.
So, as we know, the Lions have a hole at safety opposite Tracy Walker, and it just so happens that one of the best safeties in the league, in Jamaal Adams, is suddenly available via trade. Now, Bleacher Report listed the Lions as a long shot to land Jamaal Adams, but I think long shot is I think that's even being nice. So, Lions are third in cap space with about $29 million. Is what we're sitting on, which is
ain't about cap space, though. It's about assets.
Exactly. And there's also the fact that it doesn't sound like Jamaal Adams wants to play in Detroit.
No.
He listed 7 teams he would welcome in terms of a trade, and he said
they're all
Ravens,
playoff
Cowboys,
teams.
Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, Niners, Seahawks.
All playoff
Detroit's
teams.
nowhere in there. So, yeah, you would need considerable assets, and we have the cap space. And that's just to entice the New York Jets to play ball. And even if they do, you might have a disgruntled Jamaal Adams here. But what are your thoughts on it?
I'll agree with you. I honestly think it's beyond a long shot for the Lions to get him. He doesn't want to be here. I don't know if there's any kind of no trade clause in his contract to begin with. He's obviously has a short list of teams that he'd be willing to go to. He wants to compete for a Super Bowl. He wants that championship. He wants more, the ability to play in the playoffs. He doesn't want to play in a city or for a team that you could argue that they're rebuilding. He doesn't want to play for a team that really doesn't have a real shot at an NFC title or a conference title to get to the Super Bowl. He doesn't want to play in a situation where they're not even the best team or even arguably one of the best 2 teams in their own division. He wants to compete. He wants to compete for a title, and I don't really blame him for that. He's obviously one of the premier safeties in the league, if not the premier safety in the league. And I don't think cap space is really the big factor in this. It's whether or not the Lions have the assets to entice the Jets. Sure, they'll probably have a solid to high draft pick to entice the Jets a little bit. But again, you don't want to have a guy hold out as soon as he gets traded here and be a problem from day one, especially if you gave up a first round pick to get him.
But in terms of cap space, I do believe that what he's demanding kind of limits his potential options, because according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, he said that Jamaal Adams said that he wants to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, which would put him at over $20 million a season.
Right.
So there are not many teams that can afford that. Now, I didn't do the digging on the 7 teams he said he would like to go to. I'm not sure what their cap space situation is like.
I'm going to take a guess and say that considering they're all competitive teams, that they probably don't have a ton of cap space on their books.
Yeah,
they may be able to restructure some deals and change some things around. But as it is now, I don't anticipate seeing any of those teams have a ton of cap space available to them. Now, this is something that he's long said, and it's his desire to go to the Cowboys. He obviously, isn't he from Texas or something along those lines, or he went to school there or something? I don't know, but he obviously has a desire to go there and play for the Cowboys. He's said it in the past, hey, come get me, to Jason Garrett, I believe is who he said it to. It might have been Jerry Jones.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think that is easily his most likely landing spot. It's whether or not the Cowboys have the ability to pay him, and frankly, I don't think they do, considering they have Amari Cooper.
I just did the research. There's only 2 teams that have the money on hand right now in cap space. It'd be the Texans and the Eagles.
In terms of the
teams on his list, yes.
And in all honesty, I think both would be a good landing spot for him. Both are teams that are going to compete. I think Texans may take a bit of a step back this year, but I think both teams are solid platforms for him to be a leader on the defense and maybe take a solid defense, or in the case of the Texans defense, a not great defense, but turn it into something that could be a factor and could be a difference maker in what is either a division championship, turning that into a conference championship, or even potentially a Super Bowl berth. So he's a playmaker, and he's one of those few guys who makes an impact on the field whenever he's on the field. So he's a guy who's going to be coveted by teams that are competing for a Super Bowl. It's whether or not they're able to afford him and if they have the assets to get him.
What to you is he worth over $20 million a season?
I think it's tough for me to pay a secondary player that kind of money. I think safety has a little bit more of an impact than just your regular corner or a nickelback. So I think safeties can make a little bit more money in terms of what they do on the football field. They tend to be leaders in the football field. They tend to be guys in the middle. They tend to be able to rush the pass or stop the run. They tend to be able to be in the play every single play, which allows them more room in terms of how much money you're willing to give them. Is Jamaal Adams one of the premier defensive players in the NFL? Absolutely. So yes, you could absolutely make the argument that he is the guy that he was worth that kind of money. It's just whether or not you believe in giving a secondary player that type of money.
Exactly. And you're 100% right. It's a little bit of a different position, but kind of the reason the Lions parted with Darius Slay is, again, it's in the secondary, but it was the value proposition of paying up for a corner, and then we ended up just drafting Jeff Okudah and paying him on a rookie deal. But it would have been nice to pair him. But yeah, but I can't stop thinking about how sexy that secondary would be, having Jeff Okudah back there and having Jamaal Adams back there.
Oh, you'd have Okudah, Trufant, Justin Coleman. You'd have Tracy Walker, who's actually could be a solid player, still young. And then you'd add Jamaal Adams to that. Yeah. You'd have the best secondary in the NFL. Like, no questions asked at all.
Yeah, that'd be quite the turnaround.
Is it a realistic situation? Absolutely not. I really don't think Jamaal Adams even wants to come here, and I don't think the Lions even have him on their radar because of that.
It's not worth paying north of $20 million for a guy that might be a headache in terms of actually staying. He might.
Where have we heard that before? But if this was Madden football, if this is Madden NFL football, yeah, I'd say go get him. But it's not. It's real life, and he doesn't want to be here for everything that I've heard about him. And I just don't think it'll work out in that situation. I don't think the Lions really have enough assets to entice them unless they want to just dump all their draft picks at the Jets. So I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Good luck to him wherever he goes. But I am curious to see where we're going to spend our $30 million cap space, and I think we'll get to that at a different show. But
considering free agency and all that's already done, I have no idea where that money's going.
That's what I'm saying. But we have teams like the Lions and the Pistons that are just sitting here with so much cap space, and it's kind of a fun time to be talking to Detroit sports, even though all the teams suck. It's kind of a fun time to talk about the possibilities.
So, in all honesty, like you got to also remember that the Lions will have to re-sign Kenny Golladay, so that's where some of that money will go to begin with. But while yes, both of these teams have a ton of cap space and there's a lot to look forward to in that regard, it could also look at as one of the most disappointing times in Pistons, or not even just Pistons, but in Detroit sports fandom history. Like, say we go and overpay for someone who doesn't work out, i.e. Josh Smith. Say we go and straight up just do a bunch of nothing. We pay a lot of guys a little as opposed to a couple of guys a lot that make a bigger impact, and we do just a bunch of nothing with the cap space. That would be so disappointing as a Detroit sports fan, and it's in all reality entirely possible in this town because it's very hard to attract big time free agents to come here. It is.
Yeah.
When's the last big time free agent signing we've made here in this town? And I'll tell you right now, it's probably with the Tigers because Mike Ilitch just threw money at those guys. So I think
it's kind of a really good segue into our next topic because the whole idea of how hard it is to bring free agents to Detroit is kind of the reason why it's so important for our teams to draft well.
Absolutely.
And the Lions bring in Troy Weaver, the VP of basketball ops for Thunder, Pistons, who was one of the guys. Pistons, who was one of the guys that we did talk about on our GM preview show. Bringing a guy like him in, who has it looks like an eye for talent. He has a history of being able to properly evaluate talent in Oklahoma City. Bringing a guy like that here, I think, is a perfect fit in terms of trying to get the rebuild going because this team has been treading water for the last decade or more.
Not always treading water. Let's just say that. They've drawn a lot. There's a reason they're the fourth worst team in the NBA this year.
Yeah. It's like we start a rebuild and like, oh, no, this isn't working. Let's give them all away. Let's try again. Start a rebuild. Nope, not working. Well,
they've never really rebuilt the proper way either. This is the first time I can honestly remember they've really rebuilt this whole situation from the ground up the way it needed to be done to begin with. And they've set themselves up for a good situation moving forward. They've got a ton of cap space. They've got that ridiculous amount of room to go in and bring in some guys. They've got that top 5 pick. That's something that they could go and get a star player to build around. And then maybe they don't need to get that star player in free agency because they got that guy. Now they just have to find complementary pieces around him and then maybe not compete this year, maybe not next year, but as free agency continues to come across, maybe, and these guys are on rookie deals, maybe you have some room to bring in another big name and then you have a nice tandem there and you have something to build around and win with. I agree with you. Troy Weaver is the perfect guy to bring to this town because he's a guy who very obviously is good at recognizing talent. He's had an eye for talent for a long time. He was a big advocate for the Thunder grabbing Russell Westbrook at number 4 overall. Look how that worked out. They almost they went to the NBA Finals at one point. Granted,
And not
they had
many
James
teams
Harden.
had Westbrook pegged that high.
Right. And granted, they had James Harden, Kevin Durant. However, still a very good basketball team with a lot of success. I believe he was there for 10 years, 11 years? 11 years.
2008.
2008. He was there for 11, almost 12 years. They reached the playoffs 9 times in that time period while he was there. That tells you that he was able to find the right talent to have continued and sustained success for the future for that organization. And that's going to be something that we need to see here. We've had zero consistent success here in any of our sports teams. Let's just preface, things by saying that. But with the Pistons in particular, where sure, we made the playoffs one year, got swept in the playoffs, and then the next year are terrible. How many times have we seen that over the last decade? More than once.
Well, twice for the Pistons.
Yeah. But that's my point. A zero level of consistency when it comes to sustained success for the Pistons organization. And Troy Weaver's a guy who I feel very strongly can bring that. Is he Chauncey Billups? Is he the name that we wanted here in this town? No, he's not. He's not the name everybody clamored for. However, that's
the elephant in the room I wanted to address is the fact that I know a lot of people in this city wanted Chauncey or a former Piston in general to take the GM spot. But if you were following this search over the last couple of weeks, it was looking increasingly unlikely that Chauncey was going to come because the team was not showing much interest in Chauncey. And when asked, I believe it was Tom Gore said he'd be open to bringing him on in an advisory role. And
an advisory role or a front office role that was below the GM that they hired. I saw that and I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's not the guy we're looking at.
That's the point I was like, all right, I guess we're not going that route.
Right. It seems to me that Tom Gores and the rest of that Pistons front office and Arn Tellem and Ed Stefanski decided that they wanted somebody with plenty of experience at being successful with the draft. And that's what they went after with Troy Weaver. And I really do believe that he is the right guy for the job. I do think the common theme I've seen from most of the media pundits out there is the Pistons struck gold with him, bringing him in. He was going to be a tough get from OKC, and they did right by bringing him here. They did this well, and they got a great signing in bringing him in and having him lead this front office and build this organization and build the roster the way that we needed to be built to win.
And it's been speculated around him that he actually does have more free agent pull than I think I even gave him credit for when we were initially evaluating all the GM candidates, because it turns out a lot of players recognize his ability and his influence when it comes to recognizing and recommending talent to teams. And apparently he was the guy who got Carmelo Anthony to sign at Syracuse. So he actually has a lot of respect within the player circles, and that will help you in terms of signing free agents. So I do think there is something to be said there. But one thing I do want to say that I find very interesting, and I have been thinking about since the day they announced this, was he's been courted by many teams in the league over the past few years as a GM, and he's turned every single one of them down. I am very curious as to why he chose to accept the GM position with Detroit.
That is a good question. That's honestly a question that's kind of floated in my mind quite a bit with really any candidate. Why Detroit? Why would Chauncey want to come back here and lead a team that virtually has really no assets to its name outside of its one draft pick this year? And on top of that, maybe a couple of young guys that could be something in Luke Kennard and Sekou Doumbouya, and maybe a little nice find in Christian Wood if he comes back. But outside of that, what does this team truly have? Bruce Brown, maybe. We don't know. Possibly in a specialty role. But what does this team truly have? What is enticing to a GM to come in here and make a name? Well, my guess, personally, $30 million in cap space. No, that's the Lions. A ton of cap space. We'll just call it that. I don't know the exact number.
I think the Pistons might have close to $30 million too.
I think they do. I think it's plus $30 million.
Yeah.
But a ton of cap space.
Yeah, $35 million.
A hopefully potentially healthy Blake Griffin to maybe mentor some younger guys, maybe help lead a team and build around. A couple of young assets, a high draft pick, and a willingness to be able to prove himself as one of the upper echelon general managers in the NBA, because he's been an assistant GM or an assistant vice president. I don't know if he's ever actually been a GM in the NBA. Could be
he's
wrong.
He's never. Troy Weaver's never been a GM.
Never been a GM in the NBA. So this is his chance to prove himself, all while being honestly really experienced in a similar type role, in a role that had a lot of pull in how the organization is rostered and who's on that team. And now is his chance to prove he can build a team from the ground up. So it may have been enticing that he basically has what looks to be a almost completely blank slate for him to do something with. And that's a good way for him to prove himself to be one of the best GMs in the league, one of the better guys out there.
Probably one of the things that enticed him here is basically just gave him, he has the most autonomy. I think he's going to have the most autonomy here out of every offer that he got in terms of being able to build a team how he likes to build it, because it's basically a clean slate at this point.
I would sure hope so. I hope Tom Gores, I hope Tom Gores.
You all right?
Yeah, sorry. It's been a long day. I hope Tom Gores gives him all leeway, because I don't want Tom Gores making basketball decisions like he has in the past in terms of refusing to trade Drummond or signing Blake Griffin.
Yeah, don't veto Drummond trades.
Blake Griffin.
Don't veto any trades anymore, Gores.
Luckily, he doesn't have that friendship connection, as far as I know, with many players on the team left. Blake Griffin was the true big one. So with that not being there...
You mean Drummond?
Drummond, yeah. What did I say?
Griffin.
Oh, sorry. With Drummond not being there anymore.
We'll get to it in a second, but continue.
Right. So hopefully this means that he will have more autonomy and more ability to make decisions that he wants to do, as opposed to just something that appeases Tom Gores. I just hope Tom Gores gives him that leeway and gives him the time he needs to get things done. I don't expect a playoff, situation this year. I don't even know that I expect playoffs to happen next year. This is a building process. This is something that's going to take time. You don't build the Great Wall of China in one night, in one season. It's got to happen over a year, maybe two, potentially, maybe even three is when we need to start competing. So I'd like to see this team start to build in the right direction and become something, but it's got to be done with young assets, which Troy Weaver is good at bringing in and good at finding those guys. So I think he's the right man for the job, and I hope that he gets the leeway he needs.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up too, because in terms of finding the right assets and making all the right moves, because Omari Sankofa, the Detroit Free Press, he actually published an article couple days ago, highlighting the three things that Troy Weaver needs to basically hit the mark on in order to jumpstart this rebuild. And two are the obvious ones in terms of basically hitting a home run in the draft and getting quality free agents.
He needs to hit big in this draft, absolutely. And he needs to spend that money that he has effectively and efficiently. I'm not saying go and throw $40 million at a guy like Blake Griffin here.
Exactly.
I'm saying he needs to do this smart.
Which I hope, if he proves to be as good as evaluating talent as advertised and as we've seen him in the past, I would hope he'd be able to find some value plays in free agency.
Yeah, I would probably say I would hope so too. I mean, he does seem to be a guy who has a good eye for talent, and I think he's got the capability of finding the right pieces to put this team together in free agency.
I swear, if someone was playing a drinking game based around our podcast and said, take a shot every time someone says eye for talent. The third aspect, the one that I actually want to talk about a little bit before we close out the show, was you must decide when the Pistons should move on from Blake Griffin. Now, Griffin does have 2 years, around $75 million left on his contract, and he has a player option for his last year.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
And I don't see him opting out. Just throwing that out there.
Exactly. So my question to you here is, knowing the contract situation with Blake Griffin, knowing the injury history, is it really up to Troy Weaver in terms of when the Pistons should move on Blake Griffin? Because at this point, do you consider him immovable?
It's very possible he is a piece that you just can't move. There may be a situation like Houston, who, granted, they probably don't have the cap space to bring him in, but where they may be one piece away from doing it, from winning a title, and that's the guy that they go for if nobody else that they would look for is available. Granted, again, it's got to be a very special circumstance where there's probably only one or two of these teams in the league where they can even afford to do that. And I don't even know if there's one or two. There may be absolutely zero. And so, by that definition, he would be immovable at that point.
And I feel like if we have to move him, we're gonna have to give draft capital, which I don't want to do either. I don't think you're gonna get anything really of value for him.
Quite possibly, and you really don't want to do that in a team that you're trying to rebuild here. So Blake Griffin may just be here for the next couple of years of his contract.
Yeah, might be something you set to bite the bullet on. We had the opportunity 2 years ago. We had the opportunity.
You had a chance to move him. He was healthy. He was playing the best basketball he's played arguably in his entire career, and you didn't. You wanted to fight to go be an 8 seed and get swept by the Bucks in embarrassing fashion, mind you.
Can you imagine how much of a different look this team would have if we moved on Drummond and Griffin 2 years ago and pulled the trigger on those trades?
I would be so curious how this team would look. I'm not going to lie, because I'd be curious as to what pieces we would have gotten back in a trade for those two back then. and
I'd be
how
curious what kind of draft capital we could have gone
exactly.
back.
That's what I mean. What kind of draft capital we would have gotten, or what kind of assets we would have been able to bring in for a couple of guys like that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But either way, at this point in time, you could definitely make the argument that he is an immovable contract just because of the fact that he's only got a few years left. He's not the same player he was as far as we know, and he's constantly injured. He just missed the entire season, and he's probably going to miss, well, he's probably not going to miss any time beyond that. They're not coming back. But granted, they didn't play the whole season, but he missed the entire season that we did play, and he wasn't going to come back anyways. So I don't know. Is that a guy that another team takes a chance on and pays all that money to? I probably would say no. If I were a GM and I was trying to win a title, I don't think Blake Griffin would be the name I'd be looking for.
Yeah, I agree. Blake Griffin, I think next year is the only, like not even this year, next year is the only year he may have some value for a team looking to move a large amount of salary and bring in a large amount of money to prep for the 2022 offseason. That's the only time he's going to have value. But then he has value to us at that point. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to move him anymore.
Exactly, because that's a big contract coming off the books. That's a tough one to want to move. Maybe for a high first-round pick.
Yeah.
Maybe. But you know what I kind of compare Blake Griffin to at this point in his career? Is like one of those old, overpaid players, kind of like okay, Piston fans are going to get mad at me for this. He's better than this basketball player. He is far better. I like Blake Griffin a lot better. He's a better player. He's just an all-around better asset to this team. But in the sense of a guy who's a really good player, but you just won't win with him right now because of the contract, because of his injury issues, because of the age, whatever it be, Josh Smith. Guy who just never won anything.
Oof.
Very good basketball player.
That name just hurts.
It does. It hurts Pistons fans. But he's a guy who was at one point a really good basketball player, probably a little bit overpaid for what he was, but a very good basketball player, but just could never win.
Properly in Atlanta.
Yes. But
that's one thing.
Right. But he just could never win anything. And that's just how it was. And that, in that regard with Blake Griffin, that's how they compare. Beyond that, there's no comparisons between the two. Blake Griffin's a better basketball player all around.
I remember that Atlanta team was a fun team to watch with Horford, Josh Smith, Jeff Teague, Horford. That was a fun team.
That Atlanta team was tons of fun. They almost always finished like in the top 3 seeds in the East and just would trounce on the
always just blow it. Exactly.
Yeah.
They'd always just blow it.
That reminds me of the old Phoenix Suns teams with Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, and Sean Marion. Those teams were always near the top in the West, and then they just
never got back. They couldn't get past the Lakers.
Yeah. They'd get bounced in the playoffs. Yet that team was the most exciting team to watch.
Yeah. And then the other team that comes to mind like that is the Kevin Garnett Timberwolves.
Yep.
Used to always be very good, but never could quite get there.
Oh, man, though. Sam Cassell, Latrell Sprewell, Kevin Garnett, T-Wolves. That team was fun. Yeah. That team, honest to God, was a lot of fun to play with in NBA Live, too.
I was about to say, you want a fun classic team to play with on 2K. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of fun.
So I want to close out the show with a little fun movie topic in the spirit of our podcast. So this was something that was trending on Twitter last night, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to bring on air here. There's a list of 10 upcoming movies. Now, these movies aren't necessarily upcoming the next year, but these are movies that are on the slate to be released in the near future. And the topic said to pick 3 of these upcoming movies, and the rest get canceled. You don't get to see them, don't get to watch them, they don't exist anymore.
Gone forever. They get thrown in the trash heap.
I'm going to list off the 10 movies, and then, Nick, I want you to give me your 3, and I'll give my 3. Okay. We'll call it a day. All right, so the 10 movies here. Flash, Deadpool 3, which I haven't even heard anything about Deadpool 3.
I haven't either. So I didn't even know what was happening. That.
Thor, Love and Thunder, John Wick 4, Avatar 2, Mission Impossible 7, Indiana Jones 5, Into the Spider-Verse 2, Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie, and Justice League Snyder Cut.
So 8 was Spider-Verse 2. 9
Taika
was
Waititi's Star Wars movie was number 9.
And then 10 was...
And for those of you unfamiliar, Taika Waititi directed Thor Ragnarok, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yep.
Most recently, Jojo Rabbit. And he did direct the final episode of The Mandalorian for those of Star Wars fans that watched that show.
What was the 10th movie you said?
The Snyder Cut.
Snyder Cut of Justice League. That's right. Okay. So this does get hard. There's ones that I would honestly say are easy for me to eliminate. Indiana Jones 5. Don't need it. Don't want it. Don't care. Get rid of it. The first 3 are great. The rest of them, no thank you.
I swear, if 78-year-old Harrison Ford is in it for more than 20 minutes.
Exactly, and that's what I'm worried about happening out
I love
back.
Harrison Ford, but it's going to slow down the movie if he's the
Right.
star of the movie.
The Snyder cut of of Justice League. Yes, I want to see it. Is it one of the 3 most anticipated movies on this list? I'll say no.
Yeah.
That's the easy one to get rid
that
of.
too.
Flash, he's not
Yeah.
that exciting of a character to me.
Don't really care.
Yeah, don't care that much.
Still not invested in that group of characters anyway, so.
Right. And in all honesty, I want this movie to happen. I'm excited about it, but it's not one that I would honestly say I really need.
Because I like the way DC's been going with doing individual stories. And right now, I don't think the demand at DC's sweet spot is going back to these Justice League characters.
Well, I'm actually referring to the next movie that I'm eliminating here, and it's not one that I really need. It's one that I want, and I definitely will see it. And the first one was absolutely amazing. One of the best animated films I've ever seen, but it's Spider-Verse 2. It's just not one that I really need. Do I want it? Yeah, absolutely. I really do. But it's just not one that I desperately need. But beyond that, so I've got Star Wars, Mission Impossible 7, Avatar 2, John Wick 4, Thor, and Deadpool 3. I'm going to also get rid of Thor, Love, and Thunder.
Oof.
Hard one, but I'm really not.
The MCU.
I know. I'm really just not that excited about this phase of the MCU to begin with. So while I do think Thor, Love, and Thunder is probably going to be one of the better movies in this phase, I'm just not all that excited about this phase to begin with, so there's really only so much that I can get excited about this film. And then there's one that I have to keep for sure. John Wick 4 is absolutely on my list.
Yes.
That's probably my number 1.
I agree.
Beyond that, the Taika Waititi Star Wars, yes, please. Thank you every day. I love Star Wars films. I've been disappointed with a couple of them here, a couple of the newer ones. I love Taika Waititi. Sign me up. So there's 2. So that leaves Mission Impossible 7.
Avatar, yep. Avatar 2 and Deadpool 3.
And Deadpool 3. I'm going to go Deadpool 3. I love me some Deadpool.
Ooh.
Love me some Deadpool. Got to have a little comedic relief. That's a great character. Love it. Give me some more. Deadpool 3.
I think, and honestly, I think that is the most iffy of the bunch in terms of, 1, I haven't heard any confirmation of it actually being worked on, and 2, I'm really hoping that the fact that it's now with Marvel under the Disney umbrella, that it's not going to be toned down a little bit. That scares me if it is.
Yes, that's scary. That it's now under the Disney umbrella where Disney likes to PG-ify. As we call it, Disneyfy. I'm definitely worried about that.
I'll agree with you on John Wick 4. Absolutely must have it. Every single movie's gotten better in my opinion. Must have it. Take a Waititi Star Wars movie. I think the reason I'm really attracted to this one and the reason this one makes my list is because this is the closest. Well, this is the most different. In terms of, I kind of know what to expect going into most of these. Take a Waititi Star Wars movie. All I have to draw on is that one episode of Mandalorian directed. This could look like anything. I don't know. And it's piqued my curiosity so much that I have to see it. I can't get rid of it.
That's also that right there is also why I wish the Game of Thrones writers, what's their names?
Benioff and Weiss
We're still going to be doing a Star Wars film. That was rumored a while back, but then they decided not to do it. They separated away from it. That's why I wish that they would have continued on and done the film. The trilogy. They're doing a whole trilogy, if I remember right. That's why I wish they would have still be doing that, because of the fact that it would be different from any Star Wars film we've ever seen, and that's what I want at this point, because Star Wars has become very vanilla, and I want something different, and I know Taika Waititi is going to bring that, and that's why I wanted Benioff and Weiss to do it as well. So, but definitely Taika Waititi's up there for me, and who I would want to direct a Star Wars film.
I think Benioff and Weiss lost a lot of people's trust with how they ended Game of Thrones.
That also, yes, that also.
And then my third spot, I've been debating this for a while, is between Deadpool 3 and Mission Impossible 7.
MI6 was so good. Good.
Deadpool 3 does have those question marks, but I generally do think that, it's some of the hardest I've ever laughed is in the first 2 Deadpool movies.
Yep.
They are hilarious to me. But then I look at Mission Impossible 7 and look at how good the series has gotten over the last 3 movies and how they've just gradually gotten better and better and better and just bigger and bigger. And then thinking about what Christopher McQuarrie, who's back to direct this one, has said about the stunts they're doing for this one. He said they were obscene and he's terrified of them. And they make the helicopter chase from Mission Impossible 7 look like Tinker Toys. And that piques my interest. I'm like, what in the world are they going to be doing? And you think about, all right, Tom Cruise, I can't remember what the name of the movie, but he's doing another movie where he said he's actually filming a stunt in space. Not for Mission Impossible 7, but I'm like, all right, this man's not afraid of anything. So I'm really curious to see what he's doing for Mission Impossible 7.
Question. How does one film something in space?
I don't know.
How high is the budget for your film that you film something in space?
I don't. I mean, you could have convinced me that opening scene of Ad Astra was filmed in space with Brad Pitt.
Right?
But that's why I'm torn between Deadpool 3 and Mission Impossible 7. I think just based on the question marks and how of Deadpool 3 and where it could go wrong, I might pivot to Mission Impossible 7 here.
Fair. And honestly, I think MI7 is my number 4, and it's right behind Deadpool 3. In all honesty, I think you may have just convinced me. I'm going to switch Mission Impossible 7 to number 3 as well, so I'll make Deadpool 3 my number 4. My number 5 is actually Avatar 2. I love Avatar. The reason I don't have Avatar 2 in my top 3 is because I don't know if James Cameron's able to capture the same magic that he got with the original. It's been too long. It's been 11 years, right? So I'm worried that he's able to capture that same magic. But so, yep, definitely John Wick 4, Taika Waititi Star Wars, and I'll go Mission Impossible 7. And mind you, Mission Impossible 6 was one of my favorite movies of that year that it came out. It was an awesome movie. Highly recommend watching it.
You bring up a good point with Avatar 2, though. I just want to bring this up is part of the big appeal of Avatar 2 is how groundbreaking it was when it came out.
Avatar, the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're right, is I wonder what James Cameron can do to achieve that same groundbreaking quality, or if it's going to be just kind of, all right, it's the same technology, we're just continuing the story kind of thing.
Right, and that's what makes me honestly curious is the Avatar technology still holds up today.
Yeah.
Like it's not that far behind from today's stuff. So how much better can it really get? Like how much better can it really get? Because that's what the spectacle of Avatar was the imagery and the technology and how crazy it was and how beautiful it was. How much better can it get? You know what I mean? So that's, and if James Cameron blows me away, more power to him. But I'm curious if he can capture that same magic.
Now, don't get us wrong. I want to see basically everyone on this list, but we had to pick 3.
Yes.
So
now, question. One last question before we sign off here. Do we get an NBA season, an MLB season, and an NHL season the rest of the way? Do we finish out these seasons this year? Because obviously there's been a lot of pushback now from all the Major League Baseball.
There's been pushback.
There's been
pushback from the players in the NBA season, but I think it's going to happen. Baseball is the one that I question a lot.
Honestly, at this point, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. I don't think there's owners that straight up don't want to play. I don't think it's going to happen.
And now Fauci came on and said that if the NFL season happens, so basically having to be played in a bubble, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
The
NFL season falls right in line with the timeline for the second wave, so I'm curious how that's going to work out. Could you imagine the boom mics picking up all the commentary on the field, the constant swearing and yelling at each other?
Oh, that'd be fun as hell.
Hell yeah.
I'm here for it.
I'd love it. The FCC
one interesting
might
thing
not.
I saw was they introduced a concept for a coronavirus helmet. It was like a full closed face mask with a filter.
I saw that for hockey. I didn't see that for football.
Yeah, I saw it for football. I don't think there's any truth behind it, but it's an interesting concept that maybe could be implemented to allow players to actually play safely. I don't know, but maybe. I do think that the NFL season is in serious jeopardy right now. If I had to put money on it,
college football is too.
Roger Goodell, I think it's going to be played knowing Goodell, but
he likes his money.
But I am not anywhere near confident in saying that. I just slightly lean that way right now. I agree with you. I don't think the MLB season is going to happen because they're a bunch of greedy bastards.
It's such a nightmare. What a shitty situation that whole thing is with Major League Baseball.
I do think the NBA season will happen, but you might not see teams at full strength.
You also may not see it in Florida. It may not actually happen in Disney. The way things are going down there, things are not looking good right now. So they may move it, which I don't think is a terrible idea. Just saying. But just wherever it is played, I hope it does get played
on some remote island. It's not like you're gonna have fans anyways.
But anyways, that is going to close it out for this week, guys. Thank you for listening. Unless you have anything else to add.
No.
That's all right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next week. If you have anything to add or comment, hit us up on Twitter at RealFanReport. Or if you have any topics you want to suggest or questions for us, let us know. Yeah, Andrew, thank you for joining me. And thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast as well. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters by fans.
For fans.
Thank you guys again. Have a good one. Enjoy.
Peace.